Hello, friends, family, strangers, associations, coworkers, past, present, and future. The whole world has been watching me for several years now. I was falsely accused of at least 6 accounts in a DCFS case out of Utah, Cedar City, Utah. My son has been taken now for over a year and a half. Kidnapped, held hostage by DCFS, kidnapped by the cops and held hostage by DCFS, Cedar City, Utah. I'm going to tell you the truth about judges, lawyers, DCFS, cops, law, trials. I've talked about this stuff before, it's nothing new. Yeah, in this case, a sergeant, not just a regular cop, a sergeant, which means he's worked for the police force for many years. He's not a newbie. A sergeant made a DCFS report saying that I was homeless, wandering the streets, a drug addict, must be high on meth, or mentally ill, saying that my son was cold, saying I was wandering the streets, all of these things. Accusations. False accusations. Okay? If I was wandering the streets, was I blue? Was I hungry? Was I tired? Was I cold? Did I ever mention I was cold? Was I shaking? Nobody asked themselves these questions. Nobody asked others these questions. Nobody has been a critical thinker to their friends, family, strangers, to the authorities. I beg you to ask yourself and others these questions. The officers asked me where I lived. I gave them the address. I told them what side of town it was and what location it was near, what landmark it was next to. The cops knew that house. They knew that address. They were familiar with it because of a different individuals. And yet my paperwork said I was homeless. Okay. I answered every single question with knowledge, with intellect. If a sergeant can't tell the difference from a sober woman and a woman who's high or intoxicated and drunk, then he needs to be fired. If you look at the bookings out of Cedar City, they book people who are high on drugs and people who are drunk every single day, week, month, and year. And a sergeant who has worked for years and years in the police force needs to be fired. Who doesn't know the difference between somebody who's high, intoxicated, and sober? Who's going to pretend? That means he's admitting he doesn't know the difference? Or he's outright making a false accusation, because anyone can look at the body camera footage and can tell that I was a sober woman, knowing the resources in the community and explaining and answering questions and sharing knowledge of resources. Just because they don't like what they hear, just because they know that I'm right and I was made to be right, I was found correct. And men, narcissistic men about power and control, don't like a woman who's correct, who's made correct, who's found to be correct. And if we're going to pretend that cops and sergeants aren't narcissists, you better think again. Judges, if you're going to pretend they're not narcissistic or predatory, same with cops and DCFS, think again. A judge that says, I abused and neglected my son on false accusations and on nobody said I abused or neglected my son. The arresting cop said he arrested me to keep me warm in the trial. But that's not what my paperwork said. My paperwork said he arrested me on felony child endangerment for being outside with my baby who was dressed fully while we were waiting to talk to officers about a 911 phone call about a man following us. And then my son and I get separated. I get thrown in jail. And because I was separated, arrested, and thrown in jail by armed, complete strangers with weapons, locked in a vehicle, and then an hour later arrested and thrown in jail. On a child that I never abused or neglected. On false accusations that I disproved in every single hearing. And if we're going to pretend that judges and cops, lawyers, aren't predatory and aren't pedophiles, you need to think again. You need to think again. When there are lawyers that never ask who your witnesses are, what audios and videos you have, and when they refuse to present subpoena witnesses, and when they refuse to present audios and videos that are of your innocence, that prove your innocence of a claim, then explain to me how that lawyer is not a pedophile in a DCFS case. Explain how they're not predatory of parents and children. Explain to me your logic and reasoning, how lawyers aren't predatory. And there's no payment, you're not allowed to make payment plans. They want $10,000 or $3,000 retainer fee and then $300 an hour. Again, no payment plans. And you're going to pretend to me that it's so easy to get a lawyer? And then when there's religious people everywhere that think that the world is black and white, and it's not. And so if you have a child outside of marriage, you're not allowed financial help. You're not allowed any type of help from friends or family or anybody. If you have a child outside of marriage, disregarding that rape exists, disregarding that there are men with addictions and mental illnesses, disregarding that there are men that disrespect women, disregarding that there are men who control women and their bodies, disregarding the truth, so many truths about this world, that people turn a blind eye. They're blind, deaf, and dumb. Whether they're Christians or not, addicts or not, there are sober people everywhere preying upon my son and me. When people refuse to speak the truth about a trial, about a case, about stories and experiences, when they disregard audios and videos of innocence, paperwork of innocence. It is called perjury when a cop and a caseworker lie in court. That is called perjury, and they need to be in prison. Who's going to hold them accountable? Who is going to put them in prison for lying? It is a crime, perjury. Okay? The cop and caseworker need to be in prison. So does the sergeant who made the false reports. He needs to be fired, and he needs to be imprisoned. Who is going to hold these men accountable and these women accountable? The caseworker said she didn't know what my son was wearing on November 10th, 2020. And yet, both agencies accused my son of being cold. The cop said he arrested me to keep me warm. He did not say I abused or neglected my child. Then I got the intent not to prosecute within a week on the felony charge. And I've also never been charged or accused of a felony in my entire life as well. I also had called and gotten a voicemail returned phone call from the county attorney's office inquiring about why they dropped the felony child endangerment charge, which happened within less than 2 weeks after the arrest in November 2020. They said in an audio that there was no probable cause, no evidence for the arrests, and yet DCFS has been allowed to hold on to my son. My son did not go into DCFS based on any phone call saying that I abused my son. No, it was a 911 phone call that came in about a man following a woman and her child. a man who was not the father of the baby, a man who did not pay the bills or anything. And yet the world, this nation, state, and city have given that man power and control and given the cops, DCFS, judges, and lawyers power and control over a woman and baby's life, past, present, and future. They also tried to bring up accusations in the past of being a violent woman, violent charges in the past. Well, guess what? The world is also disregarding that there are people who are falsely accused in this world. And the accusations, arrests, do not equal guilt. Yeah, I messed up my hair. But sadly, America doesn't recognize that arrests does not equal guilt. A charge does not equal guilt. Going to jail or paying a fine or anything does not equal guilt. When lawyers never once asked me if I had witnesses, and I did have witnesses, there were witnesses in all past cases, no, there was not a fair trial. When I was not allowed to be on stand longer than 2 seconds, longer than 2 minutes, no, I've never once had a fair trial in my past. America needs to know the truth about DCFS cases and other court cases. In my past, I let lawyers walk all over me. I put my trust naively into the lawyers and into the system, saying they know what they're doing, they're educated, but they never once asked me if I had witnesses. I wasn't invested in my past cases until I had a son and he had been taken away from me. Then I got invested in a court trial and brought every single piece of evidence forward. Audios, videos, paperworks, witnesses. I was on top of everything. I knew who I wanted subpoenaed, who needed to be subpoenaed. I knew what audios and videos needed to be presented that were prove my innocence. But even when I was invested 100% into the trial and into the case, the lawyer did not subpoena all the people that should have been in trial. She refused to show audios that, yes, were very relevant in disproving claims. When they refuse to bring in relevant subpoena witnesses and refuse to show audios that are very relevant, how are they not relevant when they're disproving a claim? How is this not relevant when they're trying to threaten to adopt my son out for 18 years and it's all based off of lies? And the cop and caseworker lied in court. Why aren't they in prison? And who's going to hold them accountable? Why are you letting cops and caseworkers get away with their crimes? And then the judges, that judge, Troy Little, why is he allowed to label me a child abuser when there's an intent not to prosecute on a felony child endangerment charge? The caseworker said she did not know what my son was wearing. The cop said he arrested me to keep me warm. He never said I abused or neglected my child. The caseworker never said I abused or neglected my child. Intent not to prosecute paper, a negative drug test, a hair test which goes back 90 days. House tour that she refused to even show the video. The lawyer refused to show the video, present that. And she refused to show the 911 phone call. That said, I was going to meet the cops around the corner down the street. So when the cops found me outside walking down the street, yeah, no shit, I told the dispatcher I was going to meet the cops down the street. But then they decided to make a claim saying I was wandering the streets. Well, no shit, you found me outside. I told the dispatcher I was going to meet them down the street. And then not to present a 911 phone call? Huh. And you're going to pretend that's not relevant? And that to disprove a claim? An accusation? Threatening my child's future for 18 years? And lawyers are not taking this seriously. And you're going to tell me that lawyers, DCFS, and cops aren't predatory and pedophiles? Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. And even if a woman or a man, mother or father, was a drug addict, guess what? They should not have their child taken away from them and threatened for 18 years. This nation is out of control, stripping children's rights and parents' rights, separating families from their children and children from their parents. This is an out of control nation. It's unacceptable. A real country that cared about children or parents, you would put those people in a sober house, in a rehab, in a detox. What a concept. Why is adoption used in DCFS cases? Why isn't the word guardianship used? You're going to pretend the word guardianship doesn't exist, and guardianship isn't a concept that exists. You're stripping the rights of children and parents instead. And you, America, pretend like this is logical, reasonable, and moral and ethical. You're going to pretend this is a wonderful Christian nation. But yet you're stripping rights of babies, toddlers, children, and mothers and fathers. And you're going to pretend you're a Christian church, though, the Mormon church, that has brothers and sisters and that are drug addicts, getting their children taken away from them in DCFS cases. And because of my case, I have learned what they do to drug users and alcoholics. And it is appalling what this nation has done to strip the children's rights and strip parents' rights for 18 years. It is wrong, it is unethical, it is immoral, it is not logical, it is not reasonable. It is evil, it is predatory, and it is pedophilia. 100%. Who is going to hold these men and women accountable? Who is going to stand up and who is going to protest? When are you going to file complaints with the police station, DCFS? When are you going to file complaints against lawyers, judges, cops, and DCFS? Yes, this message is all for every single one of you out there. Every single one of you. I was falsely accused of being a child abuser when a 15-year-old punched me in the head multiple times over and over again. But yet I was accused of what? Laying a hand on her? I've never once laid a hand on her. And there was a girl that punched me repeatedly in the back of the head. And I even went to the ER over it, and I was wanting a CAT scan also, but they didn't do a CAT scan. But I still reported it and spoke to a doctor and had a medical paper. But yet I was accused of child abuse in my lifetime as well. Let alone abusing and neglecting my own son that I never abused and neglected because the judge wanted to know what my mental illness was. Yeah, what about HIPAA confidentiality rights, health record confidentiality that they're breaking, and they try to force you to do, saying if you don't get a mental health evaluation, if you don't go to therapy, you can't get your kid back. This is immoral, it is unethical, it is illogical, it is unreasonable. When none of the witnesses said I abused or neglected my kid, when none of the paperwork, nothing said that I abused or neglected my son, and yet a judge is allowed to say that I abused and neglected my son because he wanted to see what mental illness I had? No. What is the mental illness of the judge, cop, and caseworkers and sergeants, lawyer? What is their mental health? What is their mental illness? These are the questions that you people need to be asking, is what is their mental illness? For the judge to label a woman an abuser, and yet none of the witnesses said that I abused or neglected my child, what is his mental illness? And the sergeant who made 6 false accusations, what is his mental illness? The cop who arrested a woman and separated her from a baby or infant baby who was breastfeeding, nursing. What is his mental illness? A caseworker who took a tour of the house, who saw negative drug test results. What is their mental illness for holding on to my son and fighting in court to a judge? What is the CPS's mental illness report? Who saw the house tour, saw the negative drug test, and yet he's fighting to steal and kidnap my son. And it's illegal kidnapping because nobody's questioning this kidnapping. Nobody's questioning their mental health. Nobody's questioning, are they drug addicts? Are they alcoholics at home? Nobody's questioning their home life and their past and their everything. Nobody's questioning them. Why not? Why not? Ask yourself and others these questions. Who is going to stand up for what's right? Because Christians and Mormons are supposed to be standing up for what's right, standing up for what's true. But yet nobody is. Nobody is when it comes to court cases, DCFS cases. Nobody cares about witnesses, audios, videos, innocence. And yet there's thousands of documentaries out there about people who are falsely accused. But yet nobody stands up and protests. Why is that? Are you not a pedophile? Are you sure you're not a pedophile when you refuse to get involved and stand up for what's right and true? Are you sure that you're not a pedophile? All of you out there that refuse to get involved? Prove me wrong. Prove my son wrong, because I'm the only one in America that stood up for my son's rights. Who else is going to stand up for a child's rights? I could die any day, and yet I'm the only one that stood up for my son's rights, his constitutional rights to security with his mother, freedom, happiness, and peace. They're traumatizing my son because a man wanted to know what my mental illness is, but yet nobody's questioning his mental illness. Judge, DCFS, CPS, cop, lawyer, guardian ad litem. You're going to pretend none of them are mentally ill. You're going to pretend when they lie and lie and lie every single court hearing, you're going to pretend they're not mentally ill. And why are you pretending? Are you sure you're not a pedophile? Are you sure you're not preying upon my son's life and his mother's life? How are you not a pedophile if you're preying upon my life and lying about me extensively in every single court hearing?